Hello, everybody. Welcome to the group chat here on Footy Accumulators, sponsored by Betfair with me, Will Perry, and the greatest man to ever have come out of Scotland, the former Aston Villa striker, Mr. Alan McInally. We're going to have a special guest with us every week from next week. And of course, football chat and football tips. What more could you want? Alan, I am so excited for this new season. I know it's only been a tiny little break, but it's going to be so competitive, isn't it? When you look at what people have done in the transfer window and how people are going to improve.
Yeah, when we eventually managed to get the season over, and I was like, I think everybody took a kind of deep breath and just said, well, that was, thank goodness. Thank goodness we've got it done. We got the Champions League as well. There was games on every night. It was absolutely fantastic. And now we've had like a sort of 2 or 3 week break, and now you're like, the expectation is building and building and building. And everybody said, oh, it's the hope that kills you. I think the expectation this year, Will, for a lot of teams will kill them. Where they finished last year, where they want to finish this year, and you know what it's like now. Everybody wants everything immediately. So that expectation of teams to do better, or who they bought, who they didn't buy, why we didn't get them, why we did get them, it's going to be fantastic. So yeah, so the weekend goes boom. Can't wait.
Yeah, here we go. So, do you know what? Let's kick off this season, shall we? We're doing a 1 to 20 predictor. I think this is going to be quite
I hate these.
I don't know how similar ours are going to be. And I'll tell you what, let's start at the bottom. So we'll go up to the title winners at the end. Bottom 3 then, I have gone 18th, 19th, 20th. I've gone Crystal Palace to go down in 18th. I know a lot of people say this every year, don't they? And then Palace end up finishing 12th, 10th, 11th. So I've gone Palace, Fulham and West Brom. So 2 of the new boys to go down, with Leeds to stay up. What do you think, firstly, about that shout of Crystal Palace? Roy Hodgson, Al, 73 years old, the oldest manager in the Premier League. I think he's been a manager now for 45 seasons, which is absolutely ridiculous. And this is no disrespect to him. I just think, all right, they've signed Eberici Eze, great signing from QPR. He's going to have to step up, isn't he, from what he's been doing in the Championship. He's been brilliant. You've seen a lot of him as well. But is that going to be enough?
No, I agree. And I shouldn't really do this, I suppose. And I don't really think, we wrote this down. I don't know whether you can see that. There's my 3. Fulham, bottom, West Brom, and I've done Crystal Palace as well, actually. And you're right. When I was doing it, well, I was conscious of the fact that don't be disrespectful to Roy Hodgson with the experience he's got. But watching him last year, they were miles away. You're right, they brought Eze in. Is he going to be enough? No, I don't think he will be, because the simple reason is they don't have a goal scorer that's going to get them the goals, I think, that might keep them up the table this time. And obviously, is Zaha staying? I don't know. You know, they're still an
That's a big one, isn't it? It's dependent. If he stays and then they have that front 3, because there's talk of them getting Michy Batshuayi. That actually is not the worst front 3 in the world, is it? If you were to have Batshuayi spearheaded with Zaha and Eze on either side, or Eze in the deeper role, and then Andros Townsend, that's not the worst front 4.
No, I agree. But so we're hoping that then, for Palace's sake, that is, that they manage to keep that or add to the team and obviously keep Zaha. But I just don't see them. And Roy, as much as Roy's still enthusiastic after 45 years, and he obviously knows exactly what he's doing, I think his hands are tied to a certain extent of who he was maybe thinking about trying to bring in, and maybe bring in more than he has so far. Obviously, they haven't stopped doing business yet. You would think somebody else is coming in. I just think, with all the teams and all the competitiveness, I just don't see Palace surviving this year. And it's a shame, because I have nothing against Palace. It's a great place to go. You know, it's like when you go to the game, they're banging that drum, the guys behind the door. It's probably one of the best atmospheres you get at a Premier League game, going to a Palace game. But in terms of the team on the pitch, I think it's going to be really tough, genuinely. And I agree with you. I think West Brom and Fulham are the other 2 that go down. And ridiculously enough, I'm presuming, and I don't know, and I had a quick look at Betfair before we came on, I think they are the favourites, actually, of everybody, actually, to drop to the Championship next year.
Yeah, and do you know what? That atmosphere, I think, at Palace, the fact that we haven't got fans back, and the fact that we may not have anywhere near full capacity till, who knows, November, December,
yeah, absolutely.
The way it's going, that really plays against them. And just finally on Palace, 31 goals they scored, Al, last season, 31. Only Norwich scored fewer, and Jordan Ayew was the top scorer with 9. So, and look, we'll talk about the sack race later on, but Eddie Howe will be waiting in the wings, won't you'd imagine, for that job. The early pressure will be on Palace. So, yeah, those other 2 that you've got on then, same as me, Fulham, West Brom. Fulham's an interesting one, isn't it? Because they've had a completely different approach to last time. They absolutely just went 20 players in, 20 players out, and it didn't work, did it, last time? And they've learned their lessons, haven't they? Scott Parker's not doing that this time.
No, and I think he'll stay loyal to most of the players that did well for them. And incidentally, remember, they didn't come up automatically. They came up through the playoffs, which was absolutely incredible. But I just think, again, and being as loyal as he is to some of the players, and he absolutely should be, but to not go obviously over the top like they did before, and take a more measured view at it, means they might be busy in January. Depending on the way the season's going. Well, to be honest, I just don't see Fulham having anywhere near enough, mate. I mean, Mitrovic. I had a conversation with loads of people and try to convince me that Mitrovic is one of the top Premier Division strikers. I don't see him as that.
You're not a fan, are you?
I'm not. I'm not really. It's not. By the way, when he came originally, he did really well. And he couldn't stop scoring. I just don't see him being top level, and I just think he's a. I'd be unfair of me to call him a Championship striker. That's really unfair. But I don't see him as a top 10 Premier League striker, and I don't think he'll get enough goals to keep Fulham in the Championship. Or will any of his teammates do enough to try and keep them up there?
Well, I'll tell you what, if I was, when we're looking at West Brom and we're looking at Fulham, who I'd rather have as my number 9, I'd rather have Mitrovic than the combination of Callum Robinson and Grady Diangana. I know the West Ham fans, and obviously Mark Noble wasn't happy about letting Diangana. To be honest, I've not seen a hell of a lot of him. But, a youngster going for 18, 19 million quid, and those West Ham fans wanted to keep some of their own, and they haven't made any signings, have they, apart from Thomas Souček. But West Brom, I don't know about you, Al. We're agreeing on too much already, which is not part of the show, is it?
I don't like that.
Go up the table. But when it comes to West Brom, they're such a yo-yo club. Been there before, haven't they? Got the T-shirt, and that parachute money over the years has clearly worked for them. What do you make of them under Bilic? You probably saw a bit of them in the Championship last season.
I did, and I thought they were blowing it, by the way. I genuinely did. I thought they had properly blown it. And incidentally, probably right now, we should be really talking about Brentford, to be honest, because they properly threw it away. My goodness, they had one bite of the cherry, 2 bites. What was it? They went up to Stoke, didn't win. Which I think would have put them clear of West Brom. West Brom somehow managed to get a point that day. I can't remember actually the game what it was, but they fell over the line, and I just don't see them defensively. For me, is the biggest problem. The boy Diangana, I think, would be a good signing. He's a good player, quick, and they've probably stole him to a certain extent because he could be anything. Will, to be honest, and I think that's one of the reasons why the likes of Mark Noble and most of the West Ham fans weren't particularly happy about it, although West Ham are happy to get the 20-odd million in or whatever it was to try and boost some other players coming in for them. But I don't see them defensively, coping with the rigours of the Premier League, and they'll be under pressure a lot, genuinely under pressure a lot. And that's one of the simple reasons why I put them into the bottom 3.
You know, your shout at Brentford is a nice little link on to the team who I've then got above the bottom 3, which is Aston Villa. And when I made this list, Al, I kind of made it and sent it off, and then thought, about 15 times I wanted to change it, but I thought I've got to stick with it now. My Aston Villa shout staying up is only dependent on them keeping Jack Grealish, and that might not happen. If Jack Grealish goes to Manchester United, he'd be perfect for Arsenal, wouldn't he? Jack Grealish, the more I think about it. But
I think,
if he stays, I think they stay up. I don't know what you make. It's your old club. But what I was linking on from was Brentford and Ollie Watkins. That's a hell of a lot of money, isn't it? 28 million quid and rising for a guy in the Championship who scored. Look, I know he was great last season, and Brentford are having the best players picked by the Vultures, aren't they? But 12 goals in 45 appearances. They're putting a lot of faith in him. I know they wanted Callum Wilson as well. Can he get the goals, do you think, Al, to get them out of trouble, Villa?
Well, I'm going to put my head in the block and say I did a Soccer Saturday show as normal at West Brom, and I said that Ollie Watkins is such the standout football player that he's playing in the wrong league. He's a Premier Division football player. And I genuinely think 28 million is good value. I really do. And I know the stats there. You threw in 12 goals in 45 games. You're looking maybe for him to get hopefully 18 to 20. There was, of course, 3 of them scoring goals for Brentford. They shared them all between them. So I think Villa have got good business there. I haven't got them there. I've pushed them a little bit further up to 13. I think it'll still be a tough season. But that's even with Grealish in the team. I'm hoping that Grealish stays now. I genuinely am. I'm not hoping that Grealish stays. the more the season's going on, I'm thinking that he's staying, Will. I thought he would have gone already.
Yeah.
You know, I know that the England thing was good, and, you know, he gets drafted into the England squad. Great result for you, everybody, 0-0.
You think he wants to stay out? I know he's Villa through and through, and he's been there since, you know, since he was a baby, and Tim Sherwood gave him his debut, didn't he? But do you think that he actually wants to stay out? Do you not think his job is done with Villa? He kept them up. He scored the goals that's kept them up, and he's thinking Champions League and England regular.
Yeah, that's something that's got to be on his mind for sure. But I don't understand why you don't think he can be a regular of England if he's playing in the Premier League with Aston Villa doing well. You know, there's look at it down that way. What he doesn't want to do is be in a team that struggled like they struggled last season. They couldn't score goals. Let's be absolutely brutally honest here. Villa couldn't. I mean, they just got enough goals just to stay up. But that's one of the problems, and that's why they've put money and faith in Ollie Watkins. Hopefully, I actually was hoping they would get Callum Wilson, but I know he's popped up to the northeast. We'll get to that. I was hoping for them and go heavy up top and really give us a chance to win games when you're under pressure, like a lot of teams in that sort of bottom 6, 7, 8, 9 are going to be. But I'm hoping Grealish stays, and you're right. I think that's one of the reasons, or in my view, one of the reasons why I've got Villa a little bit further up than you, just in 17th place.
Yeah. By the way, there's our first bet of the season, because we both agreed on, haven't we, the bottom three. Mine subject to Grealish staying at Aston Villa. But look at that. Palace, Fulham and West Brom to be relegated, 20-1. I fancy a bit of that. I tell you what, that's my first bet of the season right there.
Yeah, I'll definitely have a fiver on that for sure. I didn't realise it was 20s. I didn't think it'd be as much as that. That's unbelievable. That's brilliant.
Let's go for that.
Yeah,
right, next little cluster. Let's talk about. So I've got 16th, 15th, and 14th. The next three up. I've gone Brighton, West Ham, and Burnley. My little 2 pennies worth on Brighton. I think they need. I saw a lot of them last season. And I'd even go as far as saying I think they actually are a better team under Potter than they were under Houghton. And I love Chris Houghton as a manager, and I think he's great. But I think I
agree, by the way.
Yeah, I don't
like that.
No, I think there was a lot of criticism, wasn't there, when Potter got it, and a lot of people saying, "Look, have they actually got better under Potter than Houghton?" And it was a big shout from Tony Bloom. But the way that they play, they do try and play football. A lot of these teams, don't they? And we're talking about Burnley as well. They get lumped in with the kind of, that long ball football, just because no one's seen a lot of them play, and they just assume that that's how Sean Dyche and Graham. Absolutely not. Those two teams, Burnley and Brighton, they both play football. But look, my shout on Brighton is I think they need to unravel some spark from Lallana. If they can get Lallana back to what he was looking like when he was at those days at Southampton and what made him get his England debut, that could be a great signing. He's only 32. He's got a lot of miles in the tank, isn't he? Because he's not played a lot with injuries. And the other one, and I want to ask you about this guy, because are you good mates with David Weir?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
So Jensen, a mate of mine from the gym, big Wigan fan, and he said the most devastated player, devastated he was to lose a player with everything that's happening at Wigan was Jensen Weir. David, so he says he's so exciting. So they've signed him. He could be fantastic, apparently. And the other one is like a new signing is Ben White, brilliant at Leeds. And so many teams after him. They got him down on a long-term contract, mixed in Al with Tariq Lamptey, and you put Dunk and White together at the back. That is a solid back line.
The boy Tariq Lamptey was fantastic. And incidentally, let's go back to the beginning of what you started in your conversation there. Brighton do not play a long ball, apart from when it's on for a diagonal to try and get somebody in, or etc. etc. They were brilliant last year. Fantastic. And incidentally, the boy Ben White, another one, I shouldn't say this, and it's not an Alan McInally Aston Villa show. I was thinking in my head, what do we need? We need somebody good, really good in there, somebody really imposing. And I'm like, it's staring you in the face. Go and get him before anybody else gets him. But the only thing, of course, was he was a Brighton player after all, wasn't he? He was only on loan at Leeds United, so that was probably never going to happen. Just to take us up to 14th place, I've gone West Ham in 17th, by the way. I think they'll struggle this year.
Okay.
Then I've gone Leeds United, because it ain't going to be. I mean, everybody's like, Leeds are back. They are back. And now they are back. But the fact that it's going to be a tough season for them, I think it'll be. I've then gone Burnley, I've then gone Brighton. So we're kind of really the same, you and I, to a certain extent there. Yeah. But I think Brighton, I think you're right under Potter. They've been excellent. And the players that you've mentioned there is the reason why I think it'll be a tough season, but I don't see them, you know, I mean, I know I've got them in 14th, but I don't see them ever really. They'll flip with relegation, but I think they'll be fine. And again, what's it about genuinely? Apart from the players you mentioned, we keep the ball at the back of the net, who's going to stick it into the back of the net for them? That's one of the big things. And that's the part that Graham Potter will be trying to address, that, you know, if he can get somebody to get, or even, let's say he gets 2 players to get them 12 to 15 goals, that may be enough.
Okay, let's see if we can disagree on something. All right.
Yep.
So I've gone for Burnley in 14th, which is not far away from where you've got them.
Yeah, 15th.
And look, everyone always says about Burnley, it's the same as Palace, isn't it? That, you know, they maybe don't have a great start, and then suddenly, Burnley, they're finally going down to the Championship. Sean Dyche has done an amazing job. Everyone agrees on that. He's an incredible manager. What he gets out of those players and the kind of, you know, the culture that he's built there and so on at Turf Moor. Interesting, actually, that they're only signing this season is Will Norris. I'm sure not many people have heard of Will Norris from Wolves. I was reading as well, Al, an average net spend, right, since Dyche has been there, an average net spend of £9 million per season, which just is incredible how he's kept them up. And, you know, he was speaking the other day, they're financially secure. They don't need to sell. Teams are after Tarkowski. And it's the same, isn't it? You know, their best players, Pope, Tarkowski, and then down the years, they've all been pipped. Whether you go back to Danny Ings and Charlie Austin and Michael Keane and whatever, they all get taken, don't they?
There's another one. I want to throw one in, and I hope you remember his name now. He went to Watford.
Andre Gray. Andre Gray.
There's another one.
Exactly. So look. So the thing with Burnley is, I think they're absolutely fine again, and they may well surprise people and be higher up than we both got them, and maybe, you know, even top 10. Who knows? Does Sean Dyche stay? I'm going to say, this is our time to bring in our sack race. First manager to go, because I've seen that you've got Sean Dyche as the first manager to go. Is that to be sacked or to leave? Because when I saw that, I was shocked. I've gone for Roy Hodgson, which I'll explain in a minute. You explain yours.
Right. I'm fed up saying this. As if you've ever been to Burnley, everybody, you get to Burnley, nice place, old stadium, you think, how can this lot have been in the Premier Division for 7 years? And I'll tell you the reason why. It's the manager of the year every year for the last 7 years. He spent 3 pence, considering some of the money that everybody else spent. His managerial nous is probably understated. He's a brilliant manager, Sean Dyche. I'm being honestly genuine. I think he should have been the manager of the year. I really do. And probably last year, when you just quite rightly said, Will, I thought there was like, oh, no way, they're going to go down, they're going to go down. No, he didn't. It was unbelievable. The boy Dwight McNeil is a wonderful young football player, and I don't even think he got in the under 23s, under 21s with England or something. Incredible. Right, so now I need to describe how I think Sean Dyche is going to go. At the end of last season, or after lockdown, was the first time I'd ever heard Sean Dyche negatively talking about the people above him, about what he wanted, what money he could spend, and it was as though he was banging his head off that wall again to do the incredible again. And you can't keep doing it. Even he can't keep doing it, as much as I think he should have been manager of the year 3 or 4 times. That obviously somebody wins the title and somebody escapes and somebody wins a cup, etc., etc., etc.
Are you saying he walks away?
I'm saying he walks away. I'm saying he leaves. By the way, incidentally, you can't sack Sean Dyche. No. I'm sorry. You can't sack him. No way.
Well, just like you couldn't sack Eddie Howe. But, you know.
No, exactly. So listen to me. The only reason I'm saying this is, and I do have Palace to go down because I think it'll be a difficult season. And I can see Roy and I can understand why he's maybe in your thoughts. I just think, and I have never, ever heard in the last 6 or 7 years Sean Dyche say anything particularly negative about how he gets to run the football team how he wants, but he's not getting it this time. And I think there's a little bit of something coming from a different direction that he doesn't like, and that'll affect him. And I don't think he'll put up with it. That's why I think he might be one of the first ones to go. But as a manager, brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Sean Dyche, incidentally, Al, first manager to Premier League this season, 9-1. 9-1. So I've gone Roy Hodgson. I'll explain it just very quickly. We talked about this already, and I think I love Roy Hodgson. I love going to his press conferences. I love everything he's about. He's an old hand in the nicest way, and he's a wise old owl, so experienced.
Yeah.
I just think last year of his contract, there's going to be pressure. And if there is early pressure and they're not thinking, that he's going to be their manager next season because he's only got a 1-year deal with the likes of people like Eddie Howe waiting in the wings and so on, I think that it could be, early in the season where Steve Parish thinks, if we know he's not going to be here next year, let's try and make this transition early and in the nicest possible way. They don't sack him. They come to a mutual agreement, and by Christmas, or before Christmas, he walks away with his head held high. Let's do another little cluster, shall we? And by the way, Roy Hodgson's the first manager to leave is 5-1. The favourite, by the way, to get first or to leave first, David Moyes, your mate, West Ham. Yeah. Let's do another little.
Having said that, I've got them 17. So, the locals won't be happy. I mean, they're already unhappy with almost everything at West Ham. So probably Moyes, I would think, of all the managers, is probably going to be under pressure more than anybody else will. So I kind of agree with you there.
And he must be so frustrated as well, David Moyes, to go into another season where, all right, they didn't have the worst season last season, they didn't have the best season, but to go into the beginning of the season with all this bad feeling and the captain, what Mark Noble said on Twitter and all that, you don't want beginning of the year, do we? Look, loads to rattle through. So let's go higher up and let's talk.
Okay.
I know you had Leeds lower down than me, but let's talk Leeds, Southampton, and Sheffield United very quickly. Leeds, I think, interesting one. Actually, this is Bielsa's first top flight campaign as a manager for 6 years. Which, when you think about a manager of his ilk, to be to managing in the second and third tiers of
he's held in such regard, isn't he?
Is crazy. Yeah, Helder Costa. They've spent money, haven't they? 16 mil from Wolves. Mm-hmm. Rodrigo, I think, cost about 26. He was banging in goals. Remember him at Bolton, Rodrigo, by the way?
Yeah, I do.
Really hit a barn door, could he, at Bolton? And then he
I was going to say, he never had 6 shots, never mind 6 goals.
10 new signings for Leeds, Al. So that's Leeds covered. I think, look, we're both saying that they're going to be safe. What about Southampton and Sheffield United? Surely, if you're Chris Wilder, you sat in the office over the summer, over the mini break, you're thinking, how the hell do I replicate or even improve on last season? Because it's an impossible job.
It's one of those jobs that, again, it's got kind of Burnley a little bit written all over it, and just that, not unfancied, but even Chris's style in his interviews, you see him, he's got that kind of like, hey, don't let them think we're a pushover here. Let's go out and prove to everybody, and they're going to have to do that again, obviously. I think one of the big things is with the crowd not at Sheffield United, I think that got them over the line a little bit a couple of times in parts of games last year. I mean, they were brilliant. They were scoring goals, couldn't cope with them. They played quite a free-flowing football. They played 3 at the back, and then all of a sudden, John Egan's left wing or something. It was a bit kind of like, if you can get to somewhere, go, do it, involve yourself in the game. And when we're defending, we defend as a team. He's been absolutely fantastic. I've got them 10th. It was actually a good bet, and I wrote this down because I was going through Betfair. Oh yeah, Sheffield United top 10. So I've got them to finish 10th.
Again, because they were 9th last season, weren't they?
3-1. And I was like, well, I'm looking at the teams I've got below them. Leicester, I think, are going to struggle. I've got them in 11th. Then I've gone Newcastle. Then I've gone Villa in 13th.
Yeah.
Brighton 14th. I'm like, I think Sheffield United will finish above all them.
Do you know what's going to be interesting with them is obviously not having Dean Henderson. He's gone back to Manchester United. He's going to be putting on David De Gea. And look, they've signed a decent goalkeeper, haven't they, in Aaron Ramsdale, 18.5 million quid. He was at Sheffield United before, wasn't he? So, they've essentially just taken him back. But can that be a seamless transition, do you think? Is he as good as Henderson?
No, he's not. Because if he was, he'd be going to Manchester United. But what I do think is, and if you think about, just put yourself in Chris Wilder's shoes here, Will. You're like, right, okay, Dean's been brilliant for us. He's going to go back to Manchester United. He goes with my blessing because the boy's done so well. Right, okay, who knows this football club? I don't really want to bring a foreign goalkeeper in because that wouldn't help my back 3, back 4, back 5. Hang on a minute. Somebody that's been here. Right, okay, let's go to Bournemouth. We'll take the goalkeeper. And I think it is a seamless transition. And I don't think he'll find it a problem coming in. And I think it's a really good signing, genuinely. And I think Chris that would have been his mindset rather than, spending, 28, 25 million on a goalkeeper that he's obviously been scouting. But I think in terms of bringing someone in that's going to be almost an immediate fit, because let's face it, it is a big part, or rather, it's not a big part. It's a specialised position that you need somebody, the whole lot to link together. And I think he will. I genuinely think he will. I think it's a great signing. And it was one, Will, and I don't know whether you think this, when a manager signs somebody, you're like, yeah, I probably could have guessed that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think I'm right in saying that Aaron Ramsdale was actually there when Chris Wilder first took over. So I think he knows what he's all about, doesn't he? And look, he's done brilliant at Bournemouth to go there, to get Begovic out of the team. I think they had Artur Boruc at the time as well, too experienced.
Yeah, they did.
To go in. He only signed a long-term contract last year. And then obviously, they've got that business done early. He's seen that Henderson was going to go back. So look, this is interesting now because it moves us on to our sort of top tens. And I found this really hard to do. I didn't find the first place hard to do, which I'm sure you know about. We'll get to that later. But yeah. I found the top 10 tricky because, look, Southampton, I've already mentioned that I've got them in 12th. I think they'll be much improved. And who knows, you've got them higher up. It's like you've got them in your top 10.
I've got them. Well, I've put Leicester in 11,
yeah.
Sheffield United 10, Southampton in 9. I think Southampton will do all right this year.
So I've got Newcastle in 10th for a top 10 finish. All this talk, am I going crazy here? All this talk of the takeover, and you've got to feel for those Newcastle fans who I love. Like all this sort of, I find there's a lot of similarities between Man City fans and Newcastle fans, obviously not so much now, but over the years. And they had all this hope and this expectation, the takeover is going to happen. They all knew deep down it was going to go tits up, and it did. and there we go. But am I going crazy with Newcastle in the top 10? I think those signings really excite me. If I was a Newcastle fan and, obviously you would have wanted the takeover to happen, but second best is surely signing the likes of Ryan Fraser, Callum Wilson, Jamal Lewis, Jeff Hendricks, a decent signing as well. They've got five new signings, decent players. I think Fraser and Wilson, I'm right in saying, not last season before, combined for 12 goals, which is a record and only beaten by Shearer and Sutton over the years. So if they can get back to anything like that, or do we look at it on the flip side and say, yeah, look, they were in a Bournemouth team that struggled and they've signed Jeff Hendrick from a Burnley team that's mid-table the whole time. They've signed, Jamal Lewis from a Norwich side that got peppered. Do we look at it like that and go, look, you're signing players that aren't going to improve you?
Well, put it this way, out with pushing the boat out, because Jeff Hendrick is he's a nice guy, Jeff, but I mean, he's not like absolute top end. I would have signed all those other players in a heartbeat. But I've still only got them in 12th because if you play for a team like Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, the big clubs, the really big clubs, I still think of Newcastle as one of the big clubs, and it is a heavy weight to carry. Trust me, a really heavy weight. And I always talk about that. Hope kills you. The expectation at Newcastle is probably genuinely as much as it is at Liverpool and Man City. But you're right. And Callum Fraser, brilliant signing, Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser. Yeah. But the boy Jamal Lewis is a flying machine as well down the flanks. They've already got Alan Saint-Maxime, who excelled. I thought he was very, very good and changed games for them. Yeah. But to be honest, I still see the weight of Newcastle with them just coming in their first season. It won't be as easy as I don't think they would. And again, there's a cloud hanging over Newcastle to the point of Stevie Bruce did a great job. He's an absolutely brilliant manager. And everybody's thinking if the takeover comes in, he's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's so much uncertainty at Newcastle that I can't be overly positive about them finishing the top 10. I just don't see that. I certainly don't see them being close to relegation, but I see them, 13th, 12th, 11th. So I put them in 12th.
Right, I'll tell you what, rattle through this end of it. I'm going to take up 9th, 8th and 7th. You do 6th and 4th, and then we'll talk about the top 3. So for my 9th, 8th and 7th, I've gone in 9th, top 10 finish for Everton, 8th Leicester and 7th Wolves. So I'll explain that in that order. I'll go Wolves first. I think we've all seen the kind of players that they've got. Everyone's fascinated to see what Fabio Silva's got, aren't they? Interesting that they signed a player who looks a little bit like him as well, Luke Matheson from Rochdale. He cost a little bit less, didn't he? I think £1 million. He's still at school. I think Fabio Silva's just about got his A-level results in Portugal. So 35 million quid. Wow. The depressing side of it, he was born in 2002, just to make us all feel a bit older. But only one goal in 15 appearances last season for Porto. And I know there were teams after him and he would have been scouted like never scouted before when he's spending that sort of money. And they're really excited about him. But I think Wolves only really going to kick on and be around where they were last season. As for Leicester, there's two Leicesters, aren't there? We've got the Leicester of last season, post-lockdown and pre-lockdown. They've really missed Ricardo Pereira. I think he's still injured as well. Season, so they're not going to be kicking on with him not in the team straight away. Chilwell's gone. I know they've got a young lad called, I think it's Luke Thomas, who came in at left back. It'd be interesting to see if he plays, or Timothy Castanedo. They signed 25 million quid from Atalanta. So look, they're still so reliant on Jamie Vardy. I think they'll be, further down the table than they were last season. So that's why I've got them in 8th. And Everton, everyone's getting carried away with Everton. My point of view, great manager Carlo Ancelotti, and look, Everton. They sign players, they end up not quite being what they'd expected and what they'd hoped for. They spent a lot of money, Everton, a lot of money with Marcel Brands, the director of football. I know Carlo's going to have a lot more authority on the players that they're signing, and he has done, hasn't he? He signed 2 players that he's managed before, James Rodriguez, who he signed twice, Real Madrid and Napoli, and Alan as well, who he had at Napoli. So he knows exactly what those 2 guys are about, but they're going to have to hit the ground running straight away if in my point of view, if Everton are going to be any higher than 9th. What's your next?
Well, let's go. So what did I say? Sheffield, I've got Southampton in 10th. I've gone Everton in 8th, and I've gone Spurs in 7th. I've got Leicester down at 11th. I think it'll be a tough year for Leicester. I genuinely do. Yeah. Because really of what you've said specifically there is they're going to rely on Jamie Vardy again. You can't just keep relying on Jamie Vardy.
Ian Acho, nice lad.
Sorry, Ian. We forgot about him, didn't we? Yeah.
Saw him a lot at City, but he's not good enough. I mean, I've been very critical of Gabriel Jesus as a backup striker. I know that role's really tricky, isn't it? It's really tricky when you to come in and deputise for players like Vardy and Aguero. But you've got to have someone there that is able to do that, is happy to do that. And Ian Acho, I don't think. They tried to play them together, didn't they? End of last season, didn't work, did it? Post lockdown.
Well, when Leicester signed Ian Acho, I would have argued with you that I think that's a good signing. I think he is a good player.
City put a buyback clause in, didn't they? So they would agree with you.
Exactly, but you're right. He maybe hasn't hit the heights and probably can't get into. I suppose it really depends the way Brendan Rodgers wants to set up his team, whether he plays both of them in the team or whether he plays Ian Acho a little bit wide, because Vardy's playing down the middle. And they don't normally play 2 up top. So I just think it'll be a really tough season for Leicester, and that's why they're way down in 11th for me. And I don't see them even remotely getting to where they were last season. And remember, you and I sat, August-ish, after the football started again, and you and I said, Leicester top 4, and we all went that.
Yeah.
And they really fell away. And they've brought a little bit in, but not enough for me that's going to make any difference. So let's go back to Everton. I've got in 8th, and I think they'll be good. There'll be times when you'll think he's really got it going. I just like Ancelotti. I'm a sucker for Ancelotti. I mean, he's just different class. But I don't see him. I was between them and Spurs. I think Spurs will struggle this year. And by the way, if Mourinho's the manager at Christmas, I'll be like, all right, well, that's good then. They're okay. But if he's not, I'll be like, I wasn't really that surprised. I just don't know what I'm getting from Spurs. I genuinely don't. I really don't. So I've got Everton in 8th, Spurs in 7th, because I don't. They're too big of the English clubs. I know that Mourinho. I was really deadly.
Spurs in 7th, they get sacked out, doesn't he? Mourinho. Spurs in 7th, he's gone.
Kind of my point, really, as in, will he be the manager at Christmas? Well, remember, we're saying where they might end up. You never know, they might be 4th by the time they get to March, but I still think they'll finish out the top 6, which will mean, inevitably, probably, what you just said is spot on, that he probably won't keep his job, Mourinho. And I just don't see Spurs, I really don't see Spurs being anywhere near the position that Daniel Levy wants them to be in, with or without Mourinho, so far.
Do you know what? I hope you're wrong, because I am, just despite his time at Manchester United, I'm a Mourinho fan. I love him. I honestly am. I love everything he's about. I think we need that pantomime, and I think he's. I know you're not a fan of the documentary as well. We've already talked about that.
I was just about to say, are you a fan of the documentary?
I tell you what, I am a fan of. I think that documentary is far more open and honest than the Man City one is. Or was, the Amazon Prime one, because it was. I think you see so many more of those moments between Daniel Levy, and obviously it's going to be staged to a certain degree. But I thought it was far less staged than the City one, and you actually had more insight into how Daniel Levy runs that club. And, I've been talking about Daniel Levy for the last 15, 20 years, however long he's been at Spurs. That to me is so educational on him as a person and what he's like. And there are some great bits. Danny Rose going into his office and just telling him that he's going to go train
Stop that right now, because if that had been a real conversation with his manager and a football player, he wouldn't have gone, well, hang on a minute, he's not been playing very well. You'd have been like, any chance you talk to Vertonghen, Ori and the goalie, and he would have mentioned names. And by the way, they're like, right, okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Rubbish.
Would you want to play for? Would you want to play for him, Mourinho? I'd love to.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I know you would.
And I know I better kind of squeeze him up into the top 6. No. Listen, and by the way, when you meet him, he's the most engaging man you've ever met in your life. I just think the situation him and Spurs at the moment ain't really going for me. And I don't think Spurs will finish any higher than 7th, to be honest.
No, I want him to do well. I've got no affiliation to Tottenham.
Hang on a minute, just quickly. I take it you've got them in the top 6 then.
I've got Spurs 6, so I've gone Leicester 8th, Wolves 7th, Spurs 6, and Arsenal ahead of them. So let's talk about those two North London sides, because I've got Arsenal above Tottenham, and I don't think there's going to be much in it. And look, that I could be completely wrong. Arsenal. I think Willian is a fantastic signing. Aubameyang will be like a new signing when they get that deal over the line. I don't know much about Gabriel. I know a lot of people who watch French football have said that Gabriel, they've already had one Gabriel at centre-back. He was useless, wasn't he? Do you remember him? I hope he's better here for Arsenal's state. And then, look, William Saliba. Let's not forget, Al, they spent 30 million quid on this kid, William Saliba, who went back on loan last season. And, he's now, I think he was on the bench, wasn't he? Community Shield for them. Yeah. Look, there are some decent signings in there, aren't they? Ceballos on loan again is a good one, but I don't think they've really spent as Arsenal fans would expect. I think a lot of Arsenal fans want him to be trusted like Guardiola is trusted. If they're calling him the mini Guardiola and so on, and the way that they'd improved and the trophies that he's already won since he's been there.
I mean, they did spend 72 million on Pepe. And you've forgotten about one particular player who I think
but not with Arteta. That was Emery.
Sorry, no, you're absolutely right. I take that back. I just meant in terms of spending, over 70 million. But there's one player there that you still haven't mentioned that I think is pushing for a start almost every week. Is Martinelli.
Martinelli, yeah.
I think he's absolutely fantastic, Will.
Yeah.
He's such an exciting young player.
If they've signed Willian, and they would have obviously, you'd imagine when they were signing Willian, guaranteed him some sort of starting role, then that puts Martinelli even further down the pecking order, doesn't it? Especially if you've got Saka playing in that front three as well. They've got some young.
I think it gives them an option.
Eddie and Nketiah as well, but are those guys going to be good enough? I think the problem, Al, for me with Arsenal last season, obviously under Emery, but even under Arteta as well, is that they just couldn't find ways to beat those teams who sat deep. There was a lot of talk about their identity when Arteta came in. He said that was one of his biggest challenges, was actually giving this team an identity, which he probably has done since he took over. But it's whether they can beat those teams. I think they had an awful record against teams in the bottom three. I think they got something like 3 points from teams in the bottom four away from home.
Yeah, it was terrible.
That's got to improve. And then, Spurs, look, Doherty, I think, is a really good signing. Højbjerg, I'm undecided about. But they need another striker, don't they? Just even watching the documentary, it brings you back the memories of when Kane was out. And then, because that's the thing with Jose, he had so many injuries. They had all these, and it just kept on happening. Whenever they did well and they beat City, do you remember at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Next minute, you've got Son breaking his arm. You've got Harry Kane out for the season. So they needed, for me, to get a striker. And they were the ones who should have been saying, Callum Wilson, we'll pay 20 million quid for him to be our backup striker.
All day long. And that's why I think when you're talking, you have to, as a manager, surely you have to prioritise, and you have to notice where you think you might be weak and where we don't want to be weak if we pick up an injury. And to be fair, Son's done brilliant. Moura, I mean, he'll always be remembered for that hat trick against Ajax. We got him to the Champions League final. But in terms of every week, I'm certainly having Harry Kane in my team in a heartbeat. But you're right. If something happens to Harry, then who's our backup? He's not going to. And that's probably one of the biggest problems. Defensively, I don't think they've been particularly brilliant. I'm not a massive fan of the goalkeeper, although he's hard to fault in some games because he actually towards the end of the season, I thought he was probably one of the better players. I just don't see this Spurs and Mourinho doing the thing. They are to get to the Arsenal one. Incidentally, I want to just talk about my sixth team, and you've actually already made a case, and I don't know where you've got them, but I've got Wolves sixth.
I've got my seventh, so yeah, just one beneath.
Which is above. I've gone Everton eighth, Spurs in seventh, which I could have flip flop no problem. But I think Wolves will be so exciting again this year. I know they've lost Doherty, but I think the players they've signed and the goals they will score this season, I think they're easy a top 16 Wolves. I think they'll be like, oh God, they play Wolves.
I wonder who's going to replace Doherty, because there was that chat about Niles, and they thought they'd got him, didn't they? But then Arteta's like, well, we're going to keep him, so that they need a right back. He was so important for them, wasn't he? Getting in behind the strikers and giving them.
He used to score some goals at set pieces, Matt Doherty, by the way. He was such a danger. In fact, I remember scoring one great goal, and he came from a different county and scored a header at the back post, and I was like,
he came from the League of Ireland.
Just quite literally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've got Arsenal in fifth, and I think Arsenal have a good season. I genuinely do. But I couldn't split them, because I could easily have put Wolves above Arsenal. But let's get back just a little bit of point you were talking about in terms of Arsenal's form against teams are maybe meant to play good against. I think what you've seen so far under Arteta, I think that's why a lot of the Arsenal fans are relatively happy at the moment. They see a structure. They actually see more of a togetherness, which I can't believe I'm saying, because a successful team, nobody ever gets on, but you're always fighting the corn for your mate at the side of you, whether you like him or you love him.
Yeah.
And that seems to be, it just seems to be more of a cohesive unit than they looked before. Because before it looked as though they were like, well, those two played together. He plays on his own. He's not a team player, but with a bit of luck, Aubameyang will score and we'll get a point.
Yeah. Do you know what my issue are with Arsenal is, look, they desperately wanted sort of two world classes, such as, what does that even mean? But they wanted two top class centre backs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've now got, last time I counted, 10 players in the first team who can play centre-back with all the signings that they've made. Pablo Mari, they made permanent £8 million. They've still got the likes of Rob Holding there and Mustafi who can play there. And, they've given David Luiz another year's contract and so on. They've got Saliba. They've got Gabriel. You could throw them up in the air for me and they could just land and who's the best two. I don't know out of those two. Rather, you know what I mean? They've spent all this money on 10 players when they could have put that into two top class ones. Gabriel may be that one. Look, we've bored everyone for the last 40 minutes. Do you know what? I knew we'd never be able to do this in 20, 25 minutes.
I thought we were going to do it in 20 minutes. I just thought we've been talking.
We're going about an hour. There's so much to talk about.
To try and like, not necessarily even just evaluate, and if they'll have the top 20, and if they'll try it and look at the end of the season and go, what? It's just so difficult. Anyway, let's get to top.
I'd love to know what odds we could get with Betfair with actually our 1 to 20 exactly. Go, that's what the 1 to 20 is going to be. That would be.
Put it this way, see those shoulder pads you've got behind you. You're like Crystal Carrington from what is it? Was it Falcon's Crest or something? It was way back in the day. Sorry, you young people, you probably won't remember that. But anyway, let's get to the top four, kid.
Go on. What's your top four? Unravel it.
Manchester United in fourth, 11-1 to win the title. Chelsea to finish third, 9-1 to win the title. Manchester City, odds on 8-11 will finish second, and Liverpool will retain the title at 15-8.
Load of
no chance. No chance. This is what it's going to be. So tell me why City are going to win the title, because you're obviously not going to go for United or Chelsea.
So I've gone from 1 to 4 down: City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United.
So we've got Chelsea and United in the same place as
we agree on that. We just don't agree on the top two. And the reason City will win the league this season is because one of the huge inflated ego that Pep Guardiola has, and when he's been beaten and when he's been told he's not good enough, he goes away and he does his work and he gets it right, as was proved after his first season. The criticism that he came in for last season. I think that, look, we're still trying to sign apparently Koulibaly, who actually is not playing centre-back whatsoever. He is not a Pep Guardiola centre-back, is he? He's
not even remotely.
He is just a kind of, you're not getting past me, McInally kind of player.
Correct. That's exactly what he is.
Yeah, which at 29 years old, for whatever it's going to be, 50, 60 million quid. I'm not convinced about that. I think Nathan Ake, I'm really happy with. Left-footed, centre-back, just what we needed. And Ferran Torres, I'm not going to lie, I didn't have a season ticket watching Valencia's games, as everyone claims to have done. You know, when you sign a player, it's like, oh, yeah, saw loads of him in La Liga last season. Did you? I saw about 4 games with him last season, and I did see.
I saw him twice. Twice I saw him. That was it.
I saw the Spain-Germany game, and that's all I needed to see. I don't know if you saw that in the Nations League. But it was absolutely brilliant, like a little pest. We've got a lot of players like that. Pep loves signing those sorts of players. Is he any better than Riyad Mahrez? Probably not. Don't know. But he's young. He's exciting. He gives them another option. We've got a million players that can play wide.
Hang on a minute. I know we've already been talking for an hour and a half, but there's just something as you're rattling on about all the players there, and I'm just wondering, you seem to have got up. You seem to have got yourself back up for the disappointment of not signing Lionel Messi.
I knew that was coming. You know what? And the amount of people that don't on this. Obviously, I mean, I think I wet my knickers at the prospect of Lionel Messi signing for Manchester City. However, I was a realist, and I've seen it all before. And look, with Messi, I said the day that everyone was convinced that Messi was going to sign for City and that Pep was out of Barcelona, I said it's not going to happen. This is my prediction was that Messi stays at Barcelona. He signs a new 3-year contract with a clause that he can become head coach in 2024. And I guarantee it's not going to be far off that. It would have been brilliant to just see. I think any fan, any Manchester United fan would have enjoyed him signing for City just to see him in the flesh week in, week out.
Absolutely.
But going around the house.
By the way, before the games, they'd have been swapping strips with Messi. You would have had to have about 1 billion strips just for the players.
Imagine it. But
anyway, sorry to throw the Messi thing in there.
I think that's going to be. I think that's going to be the differences, that we've plugged a couple of holes. For me, the big reason why we didn't win the title last season, and if I have to put it down to one thing, is Aymeric Laporte. Aymeric Laporte, we missed. For me, he's up there with Van Dijk. He's the best centre back in the league, and he was out for a large proportion of last season. Don't forget, we were losing games at Norwich when we had a combination of Otamendi and Stones, and then I think they ever played again together after losing that game. So I think that is going to be a huge thing if we could start the season with Laporte fit, and maybe he plays Laporte and Ake, both two left-footed centre-backs together, and we start the season like that. It was 18 points last season, yeah?
It was.
You could see them tailing off. I think it was 30-odd at some stage, wasn't it? That when they actually won. Whatever.
Yeah, Liverpool finished with 99, City finished with 81.
Yeah, so I think, look, I still think it's going to be to the wire, neck and neck. City, Liverpool. Liverpool's only signing, not that they needed to sign anyone really, was Tsimikas from Olympiacos, a defender. Yeah. But there's a lot of Liverpool fans thinking, look, we would have liked another striker. I know they've got Origi as a backup. It's the same for both of those teams. You lose Aguero, you lose a Salah or a Mane. And you're depleted, aren't you? Despite all the money that you spent, because they don't fill the squad full of players that can back up there. Whereas City, I think, have got more in the wings with the likes of Torres and obviously Sterling, who can play as a false 9 and so on. I'm going around the houses, but you knew I was always going to say Manchester City.
Yeah, and by the way, you haven't mentioned the likes of Garcia and the boy at fullback Cancelo.
Cancelo, yeah.
I was actually really impressed with him because I thought Zinchenko had done a decent job, but I think he's even better, to be honest.
Did you see his goal for Portugal?
Oh man, stop it now! Wow. I mean, seriously. But in my head, I'm still thinking. I think Jurgen Klopp's a brilliant manager, and I think he makes good players really, really good players, and I think he makes them conscientious, and I think he makes them work hard, and I think he's got this unity of Liverpool, because I think that's what got them the title, and I think that's what got them winning games when City slipped up a couple of bits, and then they got 12 points and 15 points clear, and then it was the thing was all over. I do think Liverpool are still in the title race. Sorry, the title race in the transfer market. Will, I don't think they're finished yet, because you can't not possibly think because you won the league with 18 points and only bring in one player that's enough. I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe that Jurgen Klopp.
Thiago Alcantara, we both agree that he's an unbelievable player, and you only have to look at him.
I don't know if that's going to happen. But I genuinely don't know.
Do we agree that he's world class to go again? Look at that Champions League final. He was unbelievable for Bayern in that team, wasn't he?
Oh, listen, and I'll tell you something else. Although they play the boy Kimmich at right back, Goretzka is a different player completely and utterly. Thiago Alcantara, and incidentally, had there not been injuries, he might not even have played Alcantara. It's that difficult to get into the Bayern team, to be honest. Yeah. But he was just unbelievable. And maybe we should be surprised that it's not just Liverpool that are in to try and get him. But I think because he was that good, in Thiago's head, he might be thinking, this is some club. I think I'll just stay. Is there any reason for me to go anywhere? With this team, we should be, again, looking to win the Champions League. If he goes to Liverpool, would they win it? If he went anywhere else, would they win it? It's a difficult situation. I just don't know whether I see that actually coming over the line. And I don't know if midfield's really an area that Jurgen Klopp is overly bothered with. But if anything happens to those front three, that's a problem. And that's why I know they've got, I want to say Minimoto. It's not Minimoto, is it?
Minamino.
Minamino. Minimoto is actually a sushi restaurant in Vegas, if you're ever in the MGM, by the way.
You might have been there.
Trust me, I've been there. Minamino. I don't see him being enough, and I think they should be looking to bring in somebody else up top. Defensively, they look rock solid. The goalkeeper's different class, and I do think that's why Liverpool. I'll throw this one in, right? I think Liverpool will retain the title. I think it'll be a much tighter race, and there's no way it finishes with them 18 points ahead of Manchester City.
Yeah. So look, we have agreed on third and fourth, and I think there'll be a lot of Chelsea fans, just to finish off our leagues, who will be fancying a little outside punt of 9-1 Chelsea to win the title. They have had an unbelievable transfer window, haven't they? And look, you don't even have to just believe the hype. We've seen a lot of these players. You've seen more of them because you watch more German football than me. But when we were doing our Bundesliga shows last season, I watched a lot of Kai Havertz and I watched a lot of Timo Werner. And for those two to just suddenly seamlessly to just sign for Chelsea without any other teams like your Real Madrids and your Barcelonas and your Bayern Munich's trying to get ahead of them, what unbelievable bit of business. Ziyech is quality, absolute quality. In that Ajax season that he had with Ajax, you talked about the Lucas Moura goal. That season that Ajax had domestically and in Europe was incredible. So you throw them into the mix of players that they've already got. Obviously, they've lost Willian and Pedro, but to replace Willian and Pedro with young, exciting players like Werner and look what Pulisic was doing after the lockdown. He's only going to kick on. And then at the back, everyone talked about, and I said it about Arsenal with all these centre backs that they've got and who are the best ones. Thiago Silva could be 45 and he'd still get in that Chelsea team at centre back.
Love him.
He's 35 years old. I mean, he's fitter than a lot of 25-year-olds in that league. Yeah. He will come in. He will be that commanding figure. You could see him playing alongside Zuma and suddenly just adding so much to that back line. And then you throw in Chilwell because, they weren't happy with Emerson, the Brazilian, who's, I think, left now as well, isn't he, Chelsea? And Marcus.
Chelsea haven't had a fullback for the last 5 years because Azpilicueta's not a fullback.
Yeah.
Not really.
He's back to the days of Wayne Bridge and Ashley Cole, isn't he? That left back who gets forward, who gets balls in. But you throw him and Silva into the back line. The only problem with Chelsea, and I think we both agree on this, is Mr. Azpilicueta. Because, you spend 70-odd million quid on a goalkeeper, you can't just ship him out the door. There's talk of Edouard Mendy. Again, I haven't seen a lot of him in France, in Rennes. But he's the one who could potentially come in. He's the only weakest link for me. And I think if they had a goalkeeper as good as Edison and as good as Alisson, I think they'd be competing for the league next season.
What did I say they were? They were 9-1. And I've actually spoken to a couple of people who've been laughing and joking about, no way they finished 6th or 7th and were blah, 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 etc., etc. And my mate went, Chelsea will win the league. And we were like, what? Put your beard down. He said Chelsea will win the league. He's convinced that Chelsea will win the league because of Timo Werner, because of the Kai Havertz and the Chilwell and all the players you've spoken about. The goalkeeping situation is a problem. Absolutely no question about that. But he thinks that they will finish a lot closer. And it's a kind of Lampard revolution at Chelsea. And he's trying to make sure not only does he confirm that they'll finish in the top 4, but they're going to be a player next year. I mean, I think they'll be a little bit short of Liverpool and Chelsea, Manchester City. But you cannot fault their ambition to sign the players that they've signed, because when anybody's available in Germany, do not underestimate the power that Bayern Munich have. And for them to lose 2 international German football players to come to Chelsea and Bayern not have at least a stab at it shows you that Frank has the ability to get world-class football players coming to Chelsea, and they will be really interesting next year. And to be absolutely honest with you, of all the teams I've spoken about, and there's new players coming in, and there is that hope and expectation, it's probably Chelsea that I'm looking forward to watching the most. Are they going to blow me away like everybody thinks they're going to do, or are they going to struggle with their first season in the Premier League and take them time to adjust to it? It's a bit of that. That's one where I do think they'll finish top four, but I'm looking forward to watching them play for sure.
And we knew, as I said, this was never going to be a 20-minute conversation, and it could go on for another hour. But we've nearly hit the hour mark, and I'm determined that if we go above the hour, we're both going to get sacked. So the only other team we haven't really mentioned about is Manchester United, which is nice to leave them last. But look, there'll be United fans out there as well, won't there, saying 11-1, I fancy a pop on that. Igalo, they made that loan. Well, they extended their loan, didn't they? And Donny van der Beek from Ajax. 13-match, I think, unbeaten run, didn't they, at the end of last season? So they're in great form because there is going to be that momentum because it's been such a short break and no one stopped training. So they're going to start like a powerhouse, you'd think, as well, Manchester United. Right, Al, so that is our 1 to 20, which is going to be interesting, isn't it? We'll keep an eye on that throughout the season. But
keeping this. I am keeping this.
Keep
we'll look at it May next year.
It'll be in a gold leaf frame at McInally Towers come May 2021.
Listen, I'm going to say, it'll burst into flames by the beginning of November.
I think a lot of this will burst into flames, as will our ACCA challenge, which we're going to try and pick a winning ACCA every week. We've not had a great record at doing it last season, have we? But and I tell you what, this season, because we're so bad, we're going to kick off the first one, mainly because it's such an elongated fixture list with postponements and so on. But we're just going to do a double for our first ACCA. Okay. So I'll kick us off out, and I'm going to say the early kickoff Saturday, I'm going to go for Arsenal we've both got relegated Fulham come May. I'm going to go for an Arsenal win at the Cottage. Are you happy with that? What are you going to do for our double?
Yeah, I am happy with that. I mean, listen, again, it normally would have been bursting at the seams, Fulham, for that game of Arsenal. But yeah, I'm happy for that for sure. With the other one I'm going to go for, because I think we'll stick to the Saturday games, because obviously there's games on Sunday, there's games on Monday, and you're right, it's so elongated. West Ham and Newcastle, I don't even want to watch the game, never mind have a bet on it. I think I'll wait till I see both of those teams playing. And obviously then later on we'll get Liverpool and Leeds, and I suppose it's too easy maybe just to pick the champions. So I'll go for a toughie, and it's Palace Southampton. And as much as I think that Palace are going to struggle, I'm just more of the fact that I think Southampton have got a brilliant end to the season. That 8 goals they shipped or 9 goals they shipped against Leicester City is so far away now, and I'm going to go Southampton to beat Palace at Palace, which I think they will. So
there you go, Mr. McInally piling on the early pressure for Roy Hodgson. No, that's not going to go down well, is it? A first defeat of the season at home as well on the opening Saturday, and we would get Al for that double 3.8.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
8. Quite fancy that. We'll get that boosted by Betfair as well, won't we? So that's our opening double, and we're going to be back to. I think we'll be back to a 4-team ACCA, won't we? A 4-game ACCA next week. And just a reminder as well that if you bet £20 on Saturday's Premier League on the Betfair Sportsbook, you get a free £20 bet as well. For new and existing customers, a free bet is credited when the first bet is settled as well. We will be back next week. I will be back with these shoulder pads on. As well. Love them. Look at that. Al, great to speak to you. See you next week, everyone.